चलिए, तो एक सेशन में हमारा इंट्रोडक्शन कंप्लीट हो गया था इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी को रिगार्डिंग। आज जो है स्टार्टिंग से एक एक टॉपिक, एक एक स्टेट के रिगार्डिंग डिटेल में बात करी जाएगी। सबसे पहला स्टेट जो है वो आंध्र प्रदेश के रिगार्डिंग बात करते हैं। आंध्र प्रदेश में जो है फर्स्ट कम्युनिस्ट मूवमेंट चला था, जिसे कुछ लोग माओस्ट मूवमेंट भी कहते हैं। जैसे माओस्ट मूवमेंट के बारे में पिछले सेशन में चर्चा की गई थी। तब आंध्र प्रदेश जो था वो अनडिवाइडेड था। लाइक अभी तो आंध्र प्रदेश दो भागों में डिवाइडेड है, तेलंगाना और आंध्र प्रदेश। तब एक ही था। बैक टू 40s में व्हेन कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ऑफ इंडिया एंड लेफ्ट कैडर ऑफ आंध्र महासभा, इन लोगों ने विलेजेस, गांव के लोगों को ऑर्गेनाइज करना चालू किया, जिसको इन्होंने नाम दिया संगम का। और मुद्दा क्या था? मुद्दा था इनका बॉन्डेड और फोर्स लेबर। वहां पे उसको कहा जाता था वेट्टी। इनका एक्सप्लॉयटेशन कौन कर रहे थे? एक्सप्लॉयटेशन कर रहे थे इनके लैंडलॉर्ड्स। ग्रेन लेवीज लगा रहे थे, फोर्सफुल इविक्शन कर रहे थे, निकाल रहे थे। सो आफ्टर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम they get a platform to express their grievances against economically and political dominant Jagirdars and Deshmukh class landlords in rural Telangana. पहले it was a resistance against the landlord which was not violent. But in 1946 October, Nizam has banned Andhra Mahasabha and villagers were suppressed. Peasants took arm, heralding the first Maoist movement in India. The movement was largely successful in ending vetty, illegal exaction, compulsory grain levies, reoccupying of land seized from the landlords in rural Telangana. तो ये सक्सेसफुल। रिबेलियंस लोगों पर एक थ्योरी दी गई है कि no one can get directly converted to a rebel. Firstly, people accept deprivation to a certain limit, and if this deprivation is going to hinder or is going to surpass the level of existence, then they got converted to the rebellion. फिर उसके बाद 1947 जून में when CPI and Andhra Mahasabha decided a joining hands, and Hyderabad State Congress Party after Nizam declared Hyderabad State will not merge into India. This alliance was tactically aimed to overthrow the Nizams and creating a new state only, Vishal Andhra, by merging Telangana with Telugu speaking people and some part of Madras Presidency. However, unlike the Congress cadre who fled to the border areas in large-scale repression by Nizams, the communist cadre stayed back in the village, mobilizing the arming the villages. The mobilized villagers were divided villages into village squad of 10,000 members, regular guerrilla squads, and 2,000 members. Guerrilla squads, the best tactics in the warfare when the opposition has more people. Shivaji, Vietnam War, all these people were successful because they used the tactic of guerrilla war. छुप के वार करते। If army is coming, they will get hided in the trees, shrubs, and then they will attack from all the sides. The guerrilla squad became the nucleus of the people armed forces, and the movement grew in strength. The squads attacked the landlords, forcibly took the lands, and fled, and forcing them to flee the village. The fight of rural elites create a administration void because like उस समय जो administration था, these Deshmukhs and Zamindar Jagirdars only were handling that. So because उन लोगों ने इनको भगा दिया तो वहां पे एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव गैप आ गया और इसे फिल किया संघ ने, ग्राम राज्य, विलेज रिपब्लिक. When armed peasants uprising in rural Telangana was partially successful, ending the generation of feudal oppression and exploitation, the communist-led and communist-inspired armed movement was short-lived. In aftermath, liberation of Hyderabad as a state, a debate has ensued when CPI whether to continue the armed insurrection or employ peacefully means. Insurrection as a term, इसका मीनिंग रिलेटेड है जीसस क्राइस्ट से. जीसस क्राइस्ट की हिस्ट्री में आपको पता है कि जीसस क्राइस्ट वॉज हैंग, उनको सूली पे लटका दिया गया था. जब उनको लटका दिया गया था उसके बाद 3 दिन बाद वो दोबारा वापस आए. He came back and that was called as insurrection. So insurrection means when things are low and sudden change happens, that is called insurrection. While one section of CPI decided to renounce violence and their struggle would be decided to keep their arms lest and the gains hitherto accrued would be lost. In this section, violent communist insurgent, following successful police action, fled the plains, took refuge in adjoining forested hilly areas in Telangana and destroyed Hyderabad state. फिर late 1949 and 50s में movement has reorganized along a strict line of Maoist guerrilla war और फिर ये गोदावरी की फॉरेस्ट और भद्रचलम में फैलना चालू हुआ. Now the dense forest, rugged terrains provided an ideal condition to launch a raids into plains and retreat to this forest, like a kind of jumble area. कि पहले मारा फिर उसके बाद यहाँ पे जाके रेफ्यूजी लेगी, छुप गए जाके. Hard to find these people. Moreover, the indigenous inhabitants, Koya of these areas, who were highly discontent because of the exploitation of moneylenders, contractors, forest revenue, welcomed the rebels and protected them. So they get support from Koyas as well. कोयास कौन है? इस एरिया में रहने वाले इंडिजीनियस इनहैबिटेंट. The communists reorganized disparate Adivasi group in the village squad, village communities, and challenged these diverse struggle into a common insurgency. So, जैसे कि multiple race, caste, religion, they got to find their common enemy at that time, who was Britishers. Before that time, Britishers. So like these people also rebel, communist, Adivasi group, They found their common enemy in the form of landlords, and they have came together in this struggle. The communist insurgency of Telangana movement in Andhra Pradesh, which began in 1946, came to the end in 5 years when CPI announced unconditional withdrawal from the armed struggle. The robust insurgency operations mounted by the Hyderabad administration against the rebel was primarily the responsible of communists to call off this struggle. The well-trained military and police were more than the match of stagnant peasants' army and ill-trained and ill-equipped. As there was a firepower and military skills started decreasing, the squad started attacks on individual rather than military or police. And this degenerated into the sporadic acts of terrorism. Okay, because once you pick up your arm, now it is very hard to leave, and now you are hurting your own people. Now, decreasing participation of masses in the communist struggle, lack of solidarity with the Telangana movement in rest of the country indicated a waning appeal of communist insurgency, sharp differences amongst its leaders, realization of continuous enormous struggle against India was not a sound decision. Instead, a more flexible approach could have been adopted, compelled communist leaders to take off their armed struggle. एक अपराइजिंग हुई उसके बाद श्रीकाकुलम डिस्ट्रिक्ट में. It was not ended incomplete. So to withdraw the armed struggle by this, but resurfaced time and again as the factor which caused rebellion to arise first remained unsolved. So Maoist inspired armed insurrection happened to overthrow the state power, often referred as Girijan struggle. Girijan, who are these? These are the hilly tribes. Hill tribes, जिनको वहां पे कहा जाता है सवरा एंड जतापू. अराउंड 509 स्क्वायर माइल्स में थे ईस्टर्न घाट्स. Eastern Ghats. This area was covered by the Eastern Ghats. In Srikakulam district, as was the case of rural Telangana, these hill tribes were exploited by money lenders and landlords who not only alienated from their mortgaged lands but because of non-payment of loan, forced them to work as a bonded labor. It was under these circumstances that these tribe people organized themselves into mass organization, Sangam, under the leadership of Vem Patapu Satyanarayan and Adil Batla Kailashan. ये नाम याद रखिएगा. वेम पटापू सत्यनारायण एंड अदी बटला कैलाशन. The main demand of tribe people were uplifting restrictions on their way of cultivation, increasing daily wages, return the mortgaged lands after the expiry of mortgage period. By 1967, when Naxal movement, West Bengal, the Girijan movement has already achieved a remarkable success in getting most of their demands met. The movement also aimed at raising political consciousness of the people and remained essentially non-violent within the limit of order. It, however, turned that militant after the incident 1967, which two tribe people were killed by the landlord during the protest march, instigated the communist leader to take the revenge. and they again reorganized guerrilla squad, now called as Dalam. जिस नवंबर 1968 को अराउंड 250 से ज्यादा उन्होंने घरों में अटैक किया मनी लेंडर को, जहां पे पार्वतीपुरम में चावल वहां से चुरा लिए, अदर ग्रेन्स वर्थ ऑफ 20,000 रुपए। फिर मल्टीपल अटैक्स की सीरीज ऑफ रेड्स करते थे ये लोग बिटवीन 20 दिसंबर 1968 टू 30 दिसंबर 1969। 29 पुलिस वाले भी मारे गए by them. And meanwhile, Srikakulam communist leader have joined All India Coordination Committee of Communist Revolution and received a guidance from Charu Mazumdar, who was the person behind Naxalbari incident. Aim was class differences khatam karne and destroying the police force, because police is seen as the state power. The second phase of movement rise हुआ, guerrilla started a strategy of annihilating the enemy class campaign, killed several landlords and policemen. Previously, they were looting them. Now onwards, they were killing them. 150 persons, including policemen, were killed in Naxalite in this campaign, thus transforming non-violent movement for better wages, improved living in the nation into a struggle and seizure of state power. 300 से ज्यादा विलेज कंट्रोल में थे, 500 to 700 स्क्वायर माइल्स का एरिया इनके कंट्रोल में था, where administration has collapsed, revenue, forest, other official fled the area, and the movement soon started spilling over Odisha, MP. In 1969, Charu visited Srikakulam and hoped that it would be Yemen of India, where armed struggle would spread in the rest of the country. It will become the Yemen of India. Yemen is a city in China where the communist movement rose. Even as Girijan movement was continuing, communist was spreading their armed struggle in rest of undivided Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh Coordination Committee of Communist Revolutionaries also disaffiliated from All India Coordination Committee of Communist Revolutionary in 19 and abjured the call for annihilation and stressed on building mass support base before starting insurgency. इन्होंने एक प्रोग्राम अडॉप्ट किया, द immediate program. Nasha, always remember ki who was the leader at that moment of time. Okay. So at this moment of time, Pandit Nehru, that happened around 1964. Jawaharlal Nehru भी 2 साल में चले गए, 1969. Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. Which called upon the party worker to adopt the path of people war and mobilize the people of the plains and the forest. APCCR leaders traveled coastal Andhra, Rayalaseema to propagate graduated and protracted struggle but could not find the revolutionary potential. Instead, they observed those areas were more useful for financial support. So they find that people can give us funds. Then the APCR started insurgency in Karimnagar, Warangal, Khammam district of Telangana. Strong mass support, forested terrain for guerrilla warfare propelled the success of communist insurgency. In 1970, they covered around 7,000 and 8,000 square miles. More than 5 lakhs to 6 lakhs of villages came under their population came under their control. The administration of liberated area was run by Royatanga Sangram Samiti. Rayatanga Sangram Samiti. Relentless police was taking actions through encounters, mass arrests, socio-economic measures, weaning the masses away from the Naxalites, tides in favor of a state government. The imposition of emergency by Indira Gandhi in 1975 provided state government to take with extraordinary police power to crush Naxalite movement. With the state counter-insurgency operations did damage the organizational capacity of insurgent in northern Telangana, it again failed to defeat them altogether. The resilience of Telangana Naxalite movement, the failure of Naxalbari, Srikakulam insurgency, and the death of ideologue of Charu Majumdar in 72 caused Communist Party to break in multiple functions. In undivided Andhra Pradesh, multiple split occurred. CPI, Marxist, Leninist, and they followed Kondapalli Sitaramaiah, which was pro Charu Majumdar, and followed his ideology. Despite the multiple splits, there was broad consensus that groups that Indian state was semi-feudal and semi-colonial. Indian capitalist and comprador entities in active collaboration with the landlords are dependent on metropolitan bourgeoisie, haves and haves not. The CPI and ML party, the principal coordination of Indian society is between feudalism and mass of poor peasantry and landless agricultural labor. The principal task of agrarian revolution is required, which calls a new democratic state, is to fight against the abolish of feudal class in the countryside and democratize the social relation therein. So they have formed a new policy that unity of poor peasantry and landless poor constituting a majority of agrarian population against the feudal class. So after lifting the emergency in 1977, committee became active in expanding and consolidating the movement is Karimnagar, Adilabad district. Incidentally, these areas of Telangana has remained unaffected by communist struggle by 1940s. New class of landlords emerged post-independence in the region has continued as with the old feudal base. Then CPI-ML started organizing and mobilizing the agrarian to fight against the feudal operation, Koshi, as well as practice of Vetti. The communist cadre also formed Vritti Kuli Sangathan in various villages, which gained ample support from educated but radicalized lower caste youth from exploitation was lived experience. So Ruttu Kuli Sangathan mass agitation, enforcing landlords to yield their demands, to accept their demands without any resistance. A mere call for social boycott of landlords would result in all services caste refusing to provide services, causing great inconvenience. They conducted public hearing also in the cases of atrocities by landlords, forced them to pay amounts for their compensation and forcefully redistributed lands and illegally, which was illegally held by the landlords. And then these landlords responded by violence. Peasants beating, raiding their house, unleashing terror. The peasants, on their part, organized resistance, which further created an escalation in the violence. Then in 1978, the friction between police and RCS became so intense that the state government has declared Jagitiar and Sirikila Taluk of Karimnagar as disturbed area. So whichever area will be considered as disturbed area, police will have a special power. Extraordinary power successfully quelled the peasants' struggle in Karimnagar. Thereafter, Sitaramaiah broke away the Central Organization Committee of CPI and formed People Was. 20 April 1980, popularly known as War Group. Now, the PWG planned to expand the activities in contagious zone, developed three guerrilla zones, northern Telangana, Dandakaranya, Andhra and Odisha border area. 1980, as a part of this effort, guerrilla zones, Karimnagar, Adilabad, Warangal, Khamman, it sends seven armed guerrilla squads in strategic area Dandakaranya and the borders of undivided Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra. Gradually, an extensive mass base was built amongst the tribesmen of Dandakaranya in February, and five forest divisions comprising of Adilabad, East Division, Vishakhapatnam, East Godavari in undivided Andhra Pradesh, Gadchiroli, Balaghat, Bastar, Madhya Pradesh. The guerrilla squad gained confidence of the tribesmen of the region and organized Dandakaranya Adivasi Kisan Mazdoor Sangathan. This PWG created several fronts organizations to take up the issue concerning the weak and marginalized sections of the society, comprising peasants, industrial workers, women, artists. Some of these organizations: Radical Student Union, Radical Youth League, Mahila Shravanti, Shingarini Kramika Karmika Samkhya, Jananatya Manch, organized PW to mobilize the mass, raise funds for the party, propagate Maoist ideology, gaining power through protracted armed struggle. Now, these activities, including the redistribution of land to landless, enforcing payment of minimum wages to farm labor, imposing taxes and penalties, holding people court, enforcing social code, total ban on consumption of liquor, PW ran parallel government to influence the area. It also indulged in large-scale violence by destroying government properties, kidnapping government functionaries, attacking policemen, and the objective to weaken the administration and to achieve its ultimate political goals of capturing the political power. In 1988, the mass agitation and armed agitation gained intensity. With the acquisition of sophisticated weapons, mainly through raid by police arsenal, specialized squads, advanced guerrilla tactics, the PW posed a formidable challenge to Andhra Pradesh government. It was also the year when the founder of Kondapalli Sitaramaiah was replaced by Mupalla Lakshman Rao Ganapathy, General Secretary of Party. Thereafter, they enlarged to adjoining areas of Odisha, undivided Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, virgin territories of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. They launched People Guerrilla Army for countering security force, laterly known as People Liberation Guerrilla Army, de facto head of Maoist military arm, Nambala Kesava Rao, also called as Basavaraju. Smashed the rule of imperialism, feudalism, compared over bureaucrat capitalism, and seized the political power to setting up new democratic state in the first path of socialism. Kind of a parallel government. On 14 October 2004, BJP announced its merger with Maoist Communist Center of India and creation of single outfit called as Communist Party of India Maoist. Creation of CPI Maoist added new dimension to the Naxal problem as PWG no longer remained a state entity but became a pan-India group. 2005, following its withdrawal from peace talks, violence went again up. The number of violent incidents increased from 310 with 74 deaths to 532 with 208 deaths. In 2008, numbers of violent incidents were 100 at 92 with 46 deaths, while corresponding figures decreased enough. On 2002, on 22 June 14, Andhra Pradesh was bifurcated into Andhra and Telangana through Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act. This bifurcation, however, did not adversely affect the counter-Maoist operation. Consequently, Maoists related to the violence witnessed a sharp decline in both of the states. State government responses, successive government to the problem of left-wing extremism. Andhra Pradesh was subsequently in Telangana has been mix of caution and political consolidation to these rebels. Legislations were formed for land alienation, which was the major reason of public discontentment. Several initiatives were undertaken to provide basic amenities to people, tribesmen, economic well-being to wean away from extremist fold. Constitutional and legal provisions was taken amidst insurgency. In the first step government did Andhra Pradesh Suppression Disturbance Act was enacted. This act enabled police to suppress the peasant rebellions had spilled over Telangana and Madras presidency to declare the whole state and parts of disturbed. Certain offences committed or abetted under Indian Penal Code to be punished by death instead of punishment he or she is liable under court. Section 5 of Act bestowed upon any magistrate or police officer not below the rank of sub-inspector power to fire, use the force and order fire upon any person even causing his death to maintain public order in disturbed area. No legal proceeding will be initiated against that person and while discharging his duties. This act also enabled state police to tackle communist uprising. The Andhra Pradesh government invoked in stringent Central Terrorist Disruptive Activities (PADA) Act to empower police to tackle Maoist insurgency. The act defined as offence as terrorist act and overawing the government and strike the terror amongst the people, annihilating the section of the people adversely affects societal harmony and lethal weapons causing death and injuries. If an individual is found committing or abetting such offence, he or she shall be liable not less than 5 years in jail and also liable to fine. And this act also made that confession in front of police is admissible as an evidence. And police will not release any person in the case of habeas corpus. Legislation to protect poor peasants, the communist movement challenging the state government legislative have forced to recognize the genuine hardship of Girijans. It was important to note Andhra Pradesh state government has formed, merging Andhra state with a separation from Madras presidency. Telangana region, Hyderabad state was under Nizam rule, being different set of regimes. The two different experience different land tenures in agrarian and land. So for Telangana region, Hyderabad Tenancy and Agricultural Land Act was promulgated to improve the condition of Rayyatwadi. The act provided the determination of area of the family holding and the person deemed to be tenant. Also, what will be the minimum rent payable to the tenants is 1/4 of the gross produce of the irrigated lands, and 1/5 of the other cases, 3 or 2 times, 5 times land revenue according to the class of soil. At the same time, it prohibited receiving rent in the form of labor. The act eliminated intermediaries and abolishing Tenancy Act institution of 3 to 5 years. The protected tenants has also the option of purchasing the ownership of non-resumable lands under some conditions. Act prohibited land alienation, land fragmentation, and encouraged cooperative farming. Then Andhra Pradesh Scheduled Area Land Transfer Regulation was also enacted for the protection of tribal lands. Act prohibited of transfer of lands in scheduled areas by the tribal to non-tribal without permission. If such transfer happened, the land to be returned to the tribal people. Then Andhra Pradesh passed another act. Andhra Pradesh passed abolition and conversions into Rayadwadi regulations. Under this regulation, Muttadari system, mini zamindari was abolished and scheduled area facilitated conferment patta rights for tribal riots over the land held by them for the continuous period not less than 12 months before notification date. It benefited only third of the region who had access to the land while cultivating it. Rest them languished as landless peasants only. In 1971, the Andhra Pradesh High Court ruled that amendment is not retrospective, thus dealing a blow to the government much delayed since sincere attempts to restoring the landless tribesmen. The state government tried to salvage this situation by distributing government-owned wastelands to landless Girjan. Andhra Pradesh government has distributed 8 and 9 thousands of acre land to the people. Issue of indebtedness of the tribesmen, which was the major reason to fortify their lands to the moneylender, the government enacted Andhra Pradesh Scheduled Tribe Debt Relief Regulation. The regulation strengthened 1960 moneylender regulation provided relief to the tribesmen by scaling outstanding debt in two ways. First, interest outstanding were deemed to be discharged, only the principal amount to be payable. In cases debts were incurred after 1 January 1956, the amount was calculated up to the commencement of regulation 5% simple interest. The second was twice the amount of principal was paid. The entire debt was deemed to have been discharged. The further legal proceeding initiated by the moneylenders to recover their loan amount were barred for the period of 2 years. What was the security responses? After the Nizam was ousted by Indian Army, General J.N. Chaudhary established a new administration in Hyderabad state. The newly formed government viewed the communist-led peasant uprising in rural Telangana as rebellion against it. General Chaudhary confidently announced that he will liquidate communists in all Hyderabad in 6 weeks. Subsequently, the government launched a massive counter-insurgency offensive act against the communist rebel. Both police and military actions were two brigades of Indian Army, over 9,000 armed policemen, few battalions of Hyderabad Army, and few squadrons of cavalry also was there. The counter-insurgency operation launched against the rebel by the military administration encirclement raid, in which army would encircle around 5 to 20 villages at a time, gathering inhabitants at one place and conducting house search. Since guerrilla usually hides in field, the circle would slowly be closed until they discovered. Because the villagers who was pro-Sangam helped the government identify communist sympathizers, guerrilla squads hiding at the place, testify against them on the court. Once the army took the control of the village, administration dismantled the village republics and propped up communists, re-established village administration and returned the land properties to the landlord, which was forcibly taken by the rebels. Then they dispersed into the forest, alarmed by the spread of communist movement. Hyderabad administration urgently took the steps to counter insurgents. In effect, it employed two-pronged strategies of security, development of targeting the insurgents and population respectively. Under the security approach, joint police and military action were directed against the insurgent. The police was further supported, bolstered by the organizations of village Adivasis into civil defense group, variously named as Home Guard, Village Defense Squad, and Gram Raksha Dal. The vigilante group was armed with the firearms, with the spears and axes. Incentives were also offered to do in these groups for killing in suspected insurgents. Hundreds of persons from Koya tribes were organized into tire squads, sent them inside the forest in dalams. Furthermore, to prevent villages and Adivasi from providing logistic supports, the administration employed a classic strategy of isolation from the population of brick plan. The brick plan क्या था? Developed by General Harold Briggs, Director Operation, Communist in Malaya. This plan was the principal best way to defeat insurgency was to cut off insurgents from their logistical supply and intelligence form of their supporters amongst the population. The plan essentially involved forced relocation of population to the guarded camps called New Village. Most of it called as New Village, which was surrounded by wire fence, floodlights, had police post. Idea to keep population in and insurgent out. District Reserve Police was there, Armed Police was there in Srikakulam, 1968-69, 9 additional platoons of SAP, Special Armed Police, 3 police station, police outposts was set up to tackle these kinds of operations. To address the issue, to respond effectively to the insurgency, the state government declared agency area Parvatipuram, Palakkonda, Pattapatakam, taluks of Srikakulam, disturbed area under Andhra Pradesh Suppression of Disturbance Act. The act bestowed enormous discretionary power to the police for the lethal violence against the suspected insurgents and by bringing 2 battalions of CRPF. Now, Srikakulam, when it was mentioned as disturbed area, an emergency police headquarters was established in the district to coordinate the government efforts. The Andhra Pradesh also reached out to the Odisha undivided Madhya Pradesh government to coordinate with the police response against the Naxalite in the bordering area. Further, the state government re-employed the program of regrouping of the village. The program was iteration of BRICS plan, knowing strategic hamlets program, which was implemented in South Vietnam. Same what happened in Malaya in the BRIC plan, same American troops have also did in Vietnam. And this has increased and supported the eradication of insurgency to utmost level. Police has resorted to the large-scale arrest as well as extrajudicial killing. Prominent leaders, communist movements were killed, like Panchati Krishnamurti. Naxalite leader was killed. Vem Patapu Satyanarayan. Adil Bhatta Kalashan was killed. Insurgent was arrested by the police. The killing of 2 prominent leaders effectively brought an end of Girijan movement in Srikakulam. Stunts by increased targeting and killing the policemen. They were killing the policemen, so there was a direct fight. State government resorted to the coercive measure. Special anti-extreming wings of the police were created and established armed camps in the worst affected districts. The Andhra government also banned PW G, along with the Maoist group, invoked data and gave the police power to arrest the suspect, keep them in jail without trial for the long period. 2 years later, an elite police force called Greyhounds was created to tackle Naxal problem. Greyhounds consisted of 800 specially trained anti-guerrilla persons that lives and operates as Naxalite in the armed squads. When Chandrababu Naidu government came into power in 1995, his government allocated resources to strengthen and modernize the police force. State Intelligence Bureau. Accordingly, Greyhounds training schools were revamped, new courses and methodologies were introduced. Reserved armed battalions were converted into the commando units. As Greyhound personnel was serving in Mayost area and given additional 50% of salary as an incentive. New personnel inducted in police force to serve first 4 years in Greyhound and meritorious service in Greyhound was mandatory to get accelerated promotions. State Police Intelligence Wing was separated from police headquarters and strengthened the competent manpower and ample resources improved their technical backup. 1999, 10 years after the formation, Greyhounds started getting upper hand. Counterinsurgency operations became effective, resulting in successful neutralizing Naxal squad. 2000 PWG cadres per year encounters were introduced. Three top PWG Nalla Adi Reddy, Erram Reddy, Santosh Reddy, Sheelam Naresh. YV Reddy government, which came into power in 2004, restarted counterinsurgency operations just after the failure of peace talks. When the peace talks provided some breather to Maoists, allowed them to ensure recruitment and police mobilization. It also provided state police and intelligence agency time to train, consolidate, and strengthen and augment their capacities. So, proper training was given, sophisticated weaponry, high-tech surveillance was provided to them, monetary incentive, and communication system. The district police was also simultaneously made more effective. Personnel were trained to carry out police work such as profiling, investigation, prosecution, criminal cases against Maoists, which not only resulted in their conviction but also succeeded unearthing valuable information. Police stations, especially in the rural, were adequately fortified. PLA, PLGA, and Gen militia do not run over the time, carry away the weapons as happening in the Maoist affected area. The police also conducted mass contact programs to identify and resolve the problems. Then, State Intelligence Bureau was provided with the manpower, resources, and infrastructure. In July 2006, YB Reddy government decided to recruit 100 personals in each State Intelligence Bureau. Counterintelligence. This helped in establish a reliable information networks and penetrate the Maoist organization area. In fact, when top Maoist leader came out from hiding the participation in the peace talks, the SIB entered Nalla Malla forest and gathered the information about the leader, their style of functioning, their networks. Thus, when counter-insurgency operations resumed after the breakdown of peace talks, SIB was also gathered to collate, analyze both technical and human information, provided actionable intelligence and counter-insurgency units. In addition, a generous generous surrenders happened. Rehabilitation policies weaved into the counter-insurgency strategy played an important role. People surrendered. It was a big blow to the Maoist movement. The cash rewards was also there to curb their power, and some surrendered Maoist cadre also provided the information. So the Greyhound innovation was successful. Around 13,000 square kilometers area across the five districts in central undivided Andhra Pradesh, Kurnool, Mahbubnagar, Nalgonda, Guntur, Prakasham, as a pressure put by Greyhounds. Approximately these many people, cadres were either arrested or surrendered. What was the political response? Communists were forced to reckon with Andhra Pradesh was not lost of Congress party post-independence. The earliest election in which communists not only won legislative seats but also considerable voters share indicated communist has a strong support base, especially amongst the poor peasants and landless labor. In a bid to increase the support based on the eliminate the popular support for the communists, the Congress co-opted leftist agenda, initiated land reform, several legislation to abolish intermediaries to bestow tenancy rights. Landless peasants were enacted in a progressive image of Congress and India to the peasantry. Important it is politically co-opted Reddis, Kammas and Kapus who were landed gentries in the countryside and some who held the leadership positions in the Then Panchayati Raj system was established 1957. Zilla Parishad Panchayati Samitis saw the dominance in peasants caste, thus accommodating large section of the peasants in political position. The Congress was also able to consolidate its grassroots level leadership base. In initial decades, the view of communist insurrection essentially as a law and order problem treated it as such by deploying the police and enacting Disturbed Areas Act to give it special power to deal with the armed forces. By 1980s, afterwards the political parties termed Naxalism as a political problem, tried to find the solution through conciliation and negotiation. During the run-up to the state elections, N.T. Ramarao has referred PWG cadres as Deshbhakt patriots and Analu elder brothers in effort to win them over. Once again, Rao announced the lucrative surrenders and rehabilitation policy of 1 lakh cash award for each cadre and offered peace negotiation with PW. It helped them to bring them into the negotiation table, emboldening its leader to defy the state leadership, continuing with the violent activity. In fact, much of the PW expansion in 18 can be attributed to the friendly and benign approach of Telugu Desam government. By that time, NTR government could not overlook the mindlessness killing of the police personnel and civilians by PGB for long. Slowly but surely, the government forced to harden its stance against the PWG, imposed the bans, and beside strengthening the police to deal with the Naxal menace in the states. After N.T. Ramarao came Mari Chenna Reddy. Government was also employed in conciliatory attitude toward Naxalites. Rumors were rife that the reason Chenna Reddy's soft approach was in fact like NTR also came power with the help and support of PWG. Reddy government also released all Naxalite prisoners held without trial. It permitted Naxalites to come over the ground, hold legal activities such as protest, demonstration, and conduct disputes against the resolutions in the village. And the release of 190 hardcore Naxalites provided the much needed leadership cadre as well as helped in reinvigorating the movement of grassroots. Consequently, the Naxalite violence increased, forcing Janardhan Reddy government to reimpose ban in 7 fronts of organization. Then thereafter there was a act of surrender and rehabilitation policy to lure the Naxalites out of insurgency. Surrender of 2,500 militants activity. The ban of PWG was however briefly lifted by N.T. Ramarao when he returned to the power. The vacillating approach of successive government in Andhra Pradesh in 1980-1992, PWG allowed it to gain its strength and expand its activities beyond Telangana into adjoining state. This trend of conciliatory approach towards PWG was reserved when Chandrababu Naidu formed its government. His government reinforced the ban on PWG and its front organization in 1963 and reverted to the police confronting Naxalism with force. But this government also continued with the surrender and rehabilitation policy. On-spot dispersion of 5,000 met the immediate expenses of surrendering. Financial assistance equivalent to the reward money declared by the government. Naxalite are arrested by the police on the loan of and the loan of 4 lakhs, any additional financial assistance if Naxalite surrenders with weapon. 2,481 Naxalites surrendered, which peaked in 2003, 890 cadres surrendering before Andhra government. So surrenders are encouraged by the state government because it shatters the myth of Naxalism, are seen as rejection of Maoist ideology, therefore demoralizing the cadres, highlighting the sufferings and family cadres still in the insurgency force. Surrenders also reveal how the life is wasted in chasing the elusive dream. When surrender person is unable to integrate in the society, these factors deter the potential recruitment and joining for the force of the Maoist insurgency. They established peace talk, declared a ceasefire, and the concomitant loss of influence in the traditional stronghold. The breakdown of talks led to the increase in violence once again by PWJ group and police. Incident of violence started increasing from 1818 to 2001 to 26 in 2005. And they also make an unsuccessful attempt on the life of Chandrababu Naidu in 2003. Following the attacks, the state government intensified the security operations. It also impacts on rapid modernization of police force invested in augmenting the technical intelligence. The intelligence-driven counter-insurgency operations were successful in breaking the Naxalite, forcing them move to the strategic defense phase. All the efforts to tackle Naxal insurgency through coercive actions came to an halt. Y.V. Shekhar Reddy came to the power, promising to tackle the problem through negotiation, lifted the ban. Police action against them was suspended against PWG, who will also stop armed action. There was an unofficial ceasefire implemented in July 2004. Wheels weapon. They haven't accepted that public gathering despite the state government's strong reservation. Second rounds of talk, Myers raised an issue of extrajudicial killing, state patronage to vigilante group, right of freedom of expression. Maoist interlocutors raised the issue of non-implementation of land reforms. Only 5% of cultivable land was redistributed in 2004, to which state government responded the absence of land records, land reform measures could not be implemented. At the same time, it promised that comprehensive land inventory will be complied and commissions will be set up to look around the matters of land reform. CPI and Maoist, however, pulled out that the peace talks in January 2005 before third round of the talk could start. Now, the withdrawal of Maoist from this peace talks saw an increase in incident violence in the state. Many observers offers that CPI Maoist was used to get respite from police actions and the strengthen and consolidate their strength in the inter-regional. There was a pressure by CCC Committee for Concerned Citizens to end this violence, also because PWG was lost considerable ground area of domination, North Telangana Special Zone. Senior mass leaders started to talk hours for the solving of the problem of the masses, but ultimate aim was to establish communism through armed struggle. The withdrawal of CPI from the peace talks and brutal killing of Congress party MLAs with 6 other Maoists on 15th August 2005, Andhra government imposed the ban on CPI. On the first act of militancy administration was incorporation of survey caste crown lands into Diwani government areas. Now, except the personal lands, all the territories held by the Nizam was taken over and merged into the government land. At the same time, in an effort to co-op peasant supports, the military administration abolished the Jagirs east-west of Hyderabad state by Jagir abolition regulation for the administration of Jagirs pending their assimilation with the Diwanis and Jagir administration. Assistant Jagir administration was appointed by the military governor who were empowered to determine the size of the farmland. Civil courts replaced Atiyat authority. The military administration was also set. Agrarian Inquiry Committee to recommend comprehensive land reform legislations in Telangana. The administration also undertook a development approach to win hearts and minds of the people. Under this approach, it created Telangana a special area. In 1952, appointed a special commissioner to undertake development works in the region. These development works included construction and repair of irrigation tanks, sinkings of well, provisional medical aid, opening of a school, distribution of food and other essential commodities. Most importantly, agrarian reforms registration. To what extent these development initiative was got a positive change. However, did help also in counter-insurgency operations, enabled military and police to reach far-flung areas and stay put. For example, rural roads were primarily used for counter-insurgents, remote and villages foster areas. 268 civil centers were also built. Centers of rural development was converted into the police outpost, where landlords and the government official could visit their village and police protection. Beginning of 1968, when Naxalism resurfaced in undivided India, undivided Andhra Pradesh, the state government posted young and dedicated district officials in the tribal area. Also created a new post called Special Deputy Collector for Tribal Welfare as a clear recognition of incumbent officers unresponsive to the tribal needs were responsible for the growth of Naxalite problem. The new officials were directed to initiate development work such as road irrigation and vigorously implement the protective registrations that already existed. 32 lakhs of were given allocated to the Srikakulam district with the view to accelerate the development work in the scheduled area. During 1918 and 80 and 90, they tackled the communist rebellion spearheaded by successive government to into consideration of socio-economic aspect and created a scheme. Remote and Interior Areas Development Act was started with the realization that some part of the state continued to be underdeveloped because of their remoteness and inaccessibility and years of neglect. The program outlay of 86 crore had the scheme of ranging, building roads, minor irrigation, drinking water facilities, training program, and so forth. They were implemented in 9 Naxalite districts where were predominant inhabitant of tribal groups. Interestingly, the implementation of this scheme was entrusted to the local people, especially tribals and youth, who were perceived to be more vulnerable to get influenced by Naxalite influences. The enormity of poverty in the state given the land reforms were not implemented effectively. The development programs could not make a meaningful difference in socio-economic well-being of the peasant survival. Then YV Reddy government focused on the rural economic understanding with the most problem with their manifestation of socio-economic grievances. They developed certain agrarian and welfare programs. State government waived off agricultural loans, provided free electricity and subsidies, massive irrigation project come drinking program like Jalayagnam with the outlay of 46,000 crores to irrigate 87.32 lakh acre of fallow land to brick backward tribals, drought prone areas generate 2,115 megawatt of power beside the providing drinking water. The low cost of health, Rajiv, Arogyashri, free emergency ambulance, low cost housing, Indira Amma program, subsidized rice for the poor, loans for the women and pensions for the old, destitute, rural and urban employment, reimbursement of the fees of higher education for low income families were also initiated and implemented. Besides, the number of health centers and schools was constructed in the rural area. Focus on most affected areas in Telangana. The state government also effectively implemented various centrally sponsored schemes in backward district initiative, backward regional grant funds, National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, Prime Minister Gram Sadak Yojana, National Rural Health Mission Scheme, and Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. While the critics have questioned that the desired benefit accrued to the poor, the tribesmen of the state, these welfare and development scheme, there is no denying that these measures did ameliorate the material condition of the villages and tribe people, albeit incrementally, not exponentially. More significantly, effective implementation of these development measures robbed the Maoist issue to mobilize the mass against the government. The argument can be corroborated by the way of number of violent incidents witnessed by the state saw a steady decline. Summary: the Andhra Pradesh government defeated the communist insurgency predominantly through force-centric counter-insurgency strategy, a coercive counter-insurgency strategy of raising a special elite police force backed by the effective and sophisticated intelligence apparatus to take Maoist rebel head-on was substantially responsible for uprooting of Maoist insurgency in the state. This strategy resulted in either killing and arrested by the numbers of top Maoist leaders, forcing rest of the leadership to flee the states and take shelters in the neighboring area. The lucrative surrenders and rehabilitation policy also lured a large number of middle and lower rank cadres to surrender their joining mainstream socio-political engineering by state political leaders of empowering the middle lower class groups through grassroots institution development programs with the addressed and the political and economical aspirations of the people in rural and tribal areas of the state also robbed the Mayas the opportunity of exploiting the genuine and perceived grievances and decreasing their allure amongst the people. Welcome to Tripura. Certain task for the day. First, names of all people involved in this and their background. Secondly, make compilation of schemes, state and union. Third, security. What are the major acts for policing and paramilitary was placed in the time? Last part, one question of the day. Religion plays in India as major role for individual strife in a district because of religious inclination and temper security of state. Elaborate. This is the question what you have to solve after completing. If you want to send, you can send to this number 9345043318. So once you are done with that, these all topics will be covered, and once you are done, at least you will be able to write any kind of a question answer which will come for Naxalism. You will be in a situation to write an answer. Now, this is something which is directly connected to Indian state. There was no external influence. So if this kind of a situation is there where there is no external influence, these are the means to be taken for that. That's all for the day. Tomorrow we'll be coming to our next chapter, that will be Tripura.